In this video, you're going to find out how much money you really need to move to Mexico in 2025. We're going to break down the cost of moving into 3 different parts. Number 1, the fixed costs like visas and immigration fees. Number 2, all the expenses related to moving you and your belongings to Mexico. And number 3, how much money you'll need to settle in once you arrive. And by the end of the video, you'll have a clear picture of how much to budget for your big move to Mexico. And just a heads up, the cost might be a little bit higher than you were hoping for. Let's get started.
So guys, to clarify, this is an exercise to provide an estimate of what it could cost to move to Mexico in 2025. Of course, there are a ton of different iterations of how you can price this out, so feel free to kind of tweak the numbers based on your situation and lifestyle. But what we really wanted to do is just give you a tool to be able to calculate this often overlooked expense. So again, feel free to change things based on kind of what's realistic for you. And because there are so many different ways to kind of calculate the cost based on your situation, what we think is helpful to do is kind of create a hypothetical imaginary couple. This couple is going to be 60 years old, both of them from Chicago, and moving to beautiful San Miguel de Allende.
So meet
Pam and Gary. So let's get started with some of their pre-move expenses. So what we're thinking about here is number 1, the cost of getting the Mexican residency visa, including both steps in the US and Mexico. And number 2, the cost of actually traveling to Mexico to finalize the residency process. First up, Pam and Gary will visit the Mexican consulate in the US, where they will have to pay a $54 per person visa processing fee. Thankfully for them, there is a Mexican consulate in Chicago, so there are no other associated travel costs to this appointment. And then after this appointment, they will have 180 days where they have to enter Mexico to finalize the residency process. So our couple will need round-trip flights from Chicago to the San Miguel area, which costs $363 per ticket with Volaris. So Volaris is a budget airline, and of course with budget airlines, there are additional costs that they will throw on top of the ticket price, so we will have to pay $75 for one checked bag. So of course we're looking at $363 times 2 plus $75 for the luggage to get our final flight cost of $801. And of course, once they do arrive to the San Miguel area, they will have to stay somewhere. So we're looking at lodging. We're going to look for somewhere a little bit more affordable because costs are already adding up. So for the week in San Miguel, we have a cute little colonial style hotel that will cost $363 for 7 nights. So our couple is planning on staying 1 week in San Miguel, and in this instance, 1 week is plenty of time for 2 reasons. Number 1, the San Miguel Immigration Office does issue the Visa card on the same day. This is not always the case in all immigration offices throughout Mexico. And number 2, the immigration office there also accepts appointments, so our couple was able to book their travel dates and align them with their appointment date. And a quick pro tip that Pam and Gary are also aware of, it is generally advised to stay 24 to 48 hours after getting issued your Visa card just to make sure that everything gets properly formalized in the immigration database. So zooming back into the costs, we've already covered the flights, luggage, and also accommodation expenses, but of course that's not everything that our couple is going to spend during this week. There is also local transportation fees. So San Miguel is pretty far away from the nearest airport, and the cost for a shuttle is $30 per person. And of course that will be round trip, so we're adding $120 in airport transportation for the week. And then once they get there, they will also have to eat. So we're thinking about $65 total per day once they're in San Miguel. This is maybe a little bit on the low side, but if they do have some kind of like cheaper meals, it is entirely reasonable. So with local transportation and also the daily spend, we're adding another $510 to the budget, and that brings our total travel expenses to $1,704. So of course, this can vary a ton based on what hotel they would actually choose, what kind of restaurants they're visiting, if they want to fly first class, those kind of things. But I think it gives us, again, a pretty solid number to work with. And now that those travel fees are done, we have some other immigration fees to think about. That's because our couple has to finish the residency process at an immigration office in Mexico, and that costs 5,570 pesos per person, which is about $270 per person. And in addition to those final official immigration fees, our couple is also hiring an immigration facilitator who will just help them with the final step of this residency process. So this person will typically cost between $200 to $250 US. So we're going to take the average here of $225 and multiply that by 2 and get $450 in additional kind of immigration costs. So what we have as our final roundup for pre-move costs, we have our visa fees in the US. We have our travel costs to finalize the residency process in Mexico, and we have the final visa and immigration fees in Mexico. So our grand total is, checks notes, $2,802.
That sounds like a lot, but it's not completely unreasonable. The reason why we're calculating this cost separately is because a lot of people do this before they move to Mexico. So you do have to consider this on like a separate bucket. In our case, it didn't look like this, so it doesn't have to be like this for everyone because we timed our move to Mexico with the last step of the residency process. So for us, it was just like the one-way flight, accommodation, and food, which we needed to do anyways. So you know there are ways to make this a little bit like cheaper.
Exactly. And going back to Pam and Gary, the type of visa that they applied for is the temporary visa. This is because they are not yet officially retired. So if they were officially retired, they could get the permanent visa. And just know for either of these visas, when you're applying through financial solvency, there are financial requirements. So if we're talking about averages to get the temporary visa, you're looking at about $69,000 in savings and investments. And again, have to look at my notes. We're looking at about $4,100 in income for the temporary residency visa. For permanent, it is much more than that. It's $260,000 in savings and investments. Or again, how much for
$7,100.
$7,100
monthly
in
income.
Yeah. So this is an eligibility requirement and therefore not a cost. So we're not really including it in the cost for this video. But I think it's just very important for you guys to know that there is kind of this financial requirement to even be eligible to come down here.
Yeah, exactly. We have other videos that cover all of that. So those are going to be linked in the description if you need more information. But for now, just remember this amount of $2,802. So when you come to Mexico to finalize your immigration process, or even if you're coming here to check out if a certain city is the right place for you to go home, you can make your visit so much easier by having reliable internet everywhere you go. And a much better way to have reliable internet than your expensive international data plans is with this video sponsor, HolaFly. HolaFly is an eSIM or a digital SIM card that keeps your devices connected to the internet in over 200 destinations worldwide, including Mexico. You can purchase your eSIM via their app or website, install it before your trip, and simply activate it when you arrive with just the click of a button. Always being connected to the internet while you're traveling is great because you can send pictures to your friends and family back home, and of course you can send the picture of that new fancy residency card. And of course you can use apps like Uber, Google Translate, and search on maps for top-rated restaurants as you're wandering around town. In simple terms, HolaFly makes traveling more enjoyable and gives you the ultimate peace of mind of always being connected to the internet. And best of all their plans offer unlimited data, so there are zero hidden fees. To get started, click the link in the description below or the first pinned comment, or if you're watching in your TV, you can just scan the QR code right here and get your HolaFly eSIM today. Please remember to use the code WASTEOFTHEWORLD for 5% of your purchase, and please remember to use the code because that tells HolaFly that we are a good partner. Now we go back to
Pam and Gary.
Pam and Gary because they're about to spend even more money because now it's time for the big move.
All right, so it's now a few months later and it's time for our couple to leave for good. They are packing up their lives and moving to Chicago, so all the costs in
They're
this...
moving to San Miguel.
Oh, that's good. So all these costs will be the second bucket of costs for moving to Mexico. So this time we are looking at one-way flights in October, and again we found a decent flight with Volaris for $176 per person. This time, our couple is bringing their entire lives with them to Mexico, so we have 4 pieces of checked luggage, 55-pound suitcases. That's obviously an additional cost because Volaris is, again, a budget airline, so we have to add a total of $300 for luggage fees. And then when they do arrive to Mexico, remember that San Miguel is pretty far from the airport, and we're going to get a private taxi this time with all of our suitcases, so that will cost $75. So with the cost of our flights, the additional suitcases, and the taxi into San Miguel, our total cost for travel for this day is $727.
And now you might be thinking, who needs 4 check bags? Or you could also be thinking, just 4 check bags is my entire life. That's not enough. Well, something that you do have to consider is that if you do have a lot of things that you want to bring to Mexico, the shipping costs are crazy expensive. Like it is a lot.
Yeah, the general suggestion is actually to pack as much as you can into suitcases and pay that extra luggage fee. The bulk shipping in a truck to Mexico can get super pricey. Obviously it varies a lot depending on distance, like where you're going in Mexico, where you're coming from in the US, how much stuff. So we won't get into that. However, if you're interested in this particular subject and we get a lot of comments that you want to see a video about how to ship things to Mexico,
yes, please leave it in the comments, because if enough people are interested, we would be more than happy to make a video about it.
Yeah, it gets very complicated with the taxes, distances, amount of stuff.
Yeah,
so.
there's a lot to consider there.
All that said, where are we at with the costs?
We are 4 suitcases, flights, $727 plus the pre-move cost of $2,802. Right now we're looking at $3,529. But now we transition to cost of settling in Mexico, which is part number 3 of this video. So let's pretend that Pam and Gary took our amazing Where to Live in Mexico quiz and it confirmed their decision to live in San Miguel de Allende. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we have a super awesome quiz that is linked in the description that you just need to answer 10 easy questions, and it's gonna give you a customized result of possible places for you to live based on your answers. And as a follow-up, we're gonna send you information specific to those places, anything that you need to know so you can make like an informed decision, and hopefully we can help you find the place to call home here in Mexico. So after you're done watching the video, head to the description and please take the quiz and find out where in Mexico your heart belongs, okay? Like Pam and Gary. However, they know San Miguel, but they haven't spent a lot of time here or there. We're not in San Miguel right now. And now they enter the stage of filling out the different neighborhoods. And this part is very important, and we recommend that you take it slow.
So one of our top recommendations for people moving to Mexico is that they really take the time to feel out the specific neighborhoods where they are considering to live. And that's because it could be maybe a little noisier than you might have expected when you're just passing through during the day, or there could be construction nearby, all these like little elements that you don't really realize until you actually are there and settled. So for this example, our couple is going to 3 different Airbnbs around town, so each one for a month to, again, really feel out the specific neighborhoods. There are a ton of Airbnb options in San Miguel, but for an average, we're going to take $1,300 for the month. So for kind of settling in accommodation costs, we have an additional $3,900 for that.
And of course, there are other expenses to consider here, like miscellaneous, food, cell phone, transportation, all this stuff. And we're gonna estimate that it's about $1,200 a month. This is based on our own past expenses. So we're trying to just keep it to like our experience. Just know that this can obviously change depending on where you stay, how much you go out, you know, your lifestyle. So let's just keep it at $2,500 a month. I had to do the math. $2,500 a month for 3 months. We're talking about $7,500.
And now the final cost of moving to Mexico in 2025 for our couple coming from Chicago to San Miguel. We have pre-move expenses of $2,802. The cost of moving them and their belongings to Mexico, that cost was $727. And then settling in, the cost was $7,500. So the grand total is...
Are you ready? $11,029. That is right. Yes.
Yes.
That's a scary number.
It is a scary number.
It's a big number. Obviously this can vary depending on your situation, but it doesn't feel completely unrealistic.
Yes.
And after Pam and Gary decide on a place to live, obviously that transitions now into cost of living, which I know there's a lot of videos out there that show like a lot of people living with very little money. However, that has never been the case for us. So like for us, we've never spent less than $2,300 a month. Again, we're just sharing this so you have another reference, I guess, because it is important. Obviously, this varies a lot, depends on where you live, your lifestyle, all that stuff, but just keep that in mind that that has been the case for us.
And now there will be also some additional costs for year 1, so let's discuss those.
Yes.
So even though that final number of about 11,000 was very scary, we actually didn't really factor in all of the things that could possibly factor into that amount. So moving and shipping costs in the US for like basic supplies and that kind of stuff. We didn't include any kind of storage that they would have to use after moving out or just keeping their stuff in the US. Insurance for luggage when traveling down with all of their belongings, we didn't include that as well. So that number very easily could be a lot higher.
It could start going up, and there's also additional expenses that come after you find a place to live. Again, this varies depending on the situation, but we're talking about buying furniture. Like you might have to buy furniture if the place that you rent or buy is not furnished. And then there's also when you when you rent your apartment with a traditional realtor, sometimes you have to pay 2 to 3 months of rent and like a safety deposit. All of that has to be paid in advance, so that's money that you need to have. And there was one thing that's very important: healthcare.
Yeah, so healthcare is a very complicated topic here in Mexico, and people have different suggestions of how to kind of navigate that here in the country. So I think the consensus, or a lot of people just recommend paying out of pocket and then having kind of an emergency fund per person. So a good fund potentially for someone 60 years old is like 5 to 10K per person. And that just kind of like sits and is there for whenever you need it.
Yeah, this is considering. This is considering that if you're a healthy person too.
Yeah.
You have no like conditions, special conditions.
Yeah, and then at that age, if you do kind of go the private international health insurance route, then it'll probably be close to like $2,000 per year per person.
Yeah.
So also an additional expense that you'll want to add on to your cost of living expenses once you get down here.
Yeah.
So just to recap, that total amount that we arrived to of $11,029 is just kind of an estimate. Of course, you can tweak it based on your situation and lifestyle.
Yeah.
But we wanted to give you a tool to kind of think about this often overlooked number.
Yeah, we don't want to discourage you to move to Mexico, obviously. Like, we want you to come here and thrive, but I just feel like it's important to be honest about the real cost of moving here so you can make a decision based on your own budget. And just know that it is totally doable if you plan ahead. In our case, we timed everything with the time of remove. So like by everything, I mean like our appointment here in the INM and finalize the residency process. We timed that with our move. So I have notes on those amounts for us. We spend about $1,600 total, and this includes immigration fees that it was $548, including the facilitator. Just keep in mind this is just one person because I have not become a resident yet. Then we have plane tickets for $450, and we have food and transportation for that first week, $250, and a test Airbnb, which is this one, ended up being our home, and we paid $350 for that week. So again, there are definitely ways around this. Also, I have to mention that we did come here with a carry-on. So we had really no other moving expenses because, you know, they sell things in Mexico and we haven't bought anything, but just know that you can come here with like whatever, you know, just keep that in mind. So we truly hope you found this video useful. Remember, if you're coming to Mexico, don't forget to get Olafly for your eSIM. Just feels fun to say Olafly when you're talking about Mexico. And don't forget to use our code because really this helps us a ton. It tells Olafly that we are a good partner. And thank you for watching. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments. And if you want to watch another video, we'll put it here or here. Thanks for watching.
Gracias.
Bye.